This day has been based on really talking about the positive momentum. It is not something that is generally focused on in the newspapers. It doesn't make the headlines. But it is something that we hope that at the end of the day today you will leave and you will realize that there really is a tremendous amount of positive momentum that has been moving in Afghanistan. You've heard about, obviously, I'll review some of the areas that we've talked about today, the Obama announcement of increasing troops and slowing down the drawdown. The 164th member of the WTO, the accession which will be complete on July 29th, and now the really hard work begins. But Afghanistan is entering into the world marketplace. The new public-private partnership that has been briefly discussed, that Al-Qazai and his company have become involved with the Afghan government. We've seen increased trade and investment in Afghanistan over the last decade, but not very much by American companies. We've seen Pakistan and India and Turkey and China and European countries, but Americans have been a bit slow to invest in Afghanistan. Entrepreneurism is alive and well. At the American University of Afghanistan, we have an innovation hub, and it is inundated with new companies that are coming in. You heard the statistics, saw it on the board, that the World Bank, the best ranking that Afghanistan has by the World Bank is 34th in that starting companies in Afghanistan is relatively easy. We have seen women-owned businesses on the rise, and in fact, there will be a new publication that will be released within the next month, and it is the most complete publication on women-owned businesses in Afghanistan. This is being released by the American University of Afghanistan, and it will be the most accurate report. Just a giant plug for the American University of Afghanistan, just because I get to and I'm up here. I want to mention that a decade ago, the university, the first students were 52 men and 1 woman. We had our 6th graduation in May. 35% of the undergraduates were women, 35% of the MBA graduates were women, and we graduated the first female lawyer from Kandahar in our Stanford Law program. So women are making tremendous progress. We're seeing them in leadership roles, not just in companies, but also throughout the government. So great strides have been made. This panel gives us a perspective of everything from on the ground, from risk management, and also very special expertise as to how the accession into the WTO will help Afghanistan. So let's get started with the panel. We're starting first with Assad Mattin. Assad, thank you for being with us today. Assad I will not go into all of their bios. They're very extensive, and it will be in your packets. But Assad has had experience in Afghanistan both with the private sector and the public sector, over 35 years of business experience. And so, Assad, give us your perspective from an on the ground. We haven't really had that yet today, and I think it will be very interesting for the audience to know some of your ideas regarding investment and trade opportunities. Thank you for being with us, Assad.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much for Leslie and for your kind introduction. But first of all, please allow me to express my profound and deep gratitude to Jeff Grieco. I think he was here earlier, for all the hard work he put into making this event a great success. Jeff, thank you again. And also thanks for selecting a great panel. I really learned a lot of stuff, good information earlier, and it was very much appreciated. The purpose of my presentation is the urgent need for the Afghan industry to develop a sustainable and vibrant free market-oriented private sector-led economy. So that's what I'll be talking about. Afghanistan is currently moving forward with positive momentum, which greatly apparent in the following 4 recent events, which I put together. I mean, these are the 5 events that created that positive momentum in Afghanistan. The first is Afghanistan accession to WTO. And also, as it was mentioned earlier by a colleague of us from the embassy, and hopefully Afghanistan would join the World Trade Center, the World Trade Associations, I believe. The second is a positive decision by President Obama, who recently announced that he would keep 8,400 American troop level in Afghanistan. But remember, in addition to that, there will be NATO troops and also counterterrorism special forces and also civilians that they help with the security in Afghanistan. So if you combine and put all these numbers, it's a large number of troops, and hopefully, and I'm sure they will do a great job in Afghanistan. The third event is the NATO conference decisions and commitment that affirm some further allied support for Afghanistan security and military forces, which they are in desperate needs, and I've been working with them in the past 2 years. I can tell you a lot of story. And as reflected in the recent meeting in Warsaw, so that's the NATO commitment, which was very obvious and appreciated in the Warsaw meeting. And finally, the fourth is the recent private sector success and I would call this PPP, which is the joint venture between Al-Qusay Corporation and the Afghanistan government. So these are the 5 points just created a positive momentum in Afghanistan. So as far as I've spoken with Afghanistan and also with the Afghans, these 4 events had boosted the Afghan morale, the morale of security, and also the morale of the private sector for the same reason. So therefore, it is time for the Afghan industry, so we're coming to about industry, to capitalize on the positive momentum by seeking a series of direct roles in the furtherance of the Afghan economy. Remember, as Eleanor mentioned earlier, Afghanistan is a country for most growth, and more important, Daniel mentioned, we are not throwing money anymore. So that's Afghanistan is different from Afghanistan 2003 or 2004. Therefore, I will lay out a 4-point action plan for this engagement. I think we might have it here. So action plan number 1 is we need to encourage Afghan business leaders to develop the capacity to increase the export of goods under the US and European Union's generalized system of preferences, which is GSP. That's the number 1. I think we were on number 3 and 4. Okay. So action plan number 2 related to this subject is, of course, we need to grow international trade and investment by focusing on Afghan firms who have proven success in regional trade and as investment to expand their access to capital. And quite a bit those firms are in Afghanistan, and I don't have time, but actually I can name about the firms, and also we can discuss the market. It's a very leveraged market for Afghanistan, particularly for the agriculture. And that market includes Gulf state and Iran, India, and etc. The third will be, we need to continue leverage international assistance to deploy the resources necessary to build Afghan private sector's capacity and emerging industries. So likewise, and related to that would be Action 4. And in Action 4, we need to develop an active partnership with the Afghan government to drive the necessary legislation to promote growth and investment. And obviously, the Afghan government has to work hard to make this possible. And a variety of action is needed, like adoption of commercial law necessary to protect foreign investors, and incentive, of course, on the part of the Afghanistan government. And the last one, I would mention the business-friendly and supportive Afghanistan Investment Agency. So those were the 4 action plan essential for the success of the private sector in Afghanistan. Now, please allow me to summarize these 4 action plans, which are vital for the development of sustainable private sector led economy. If we can get Afghan industry leadership organization to work together on these initiatives, then we will start to see rapid improvement in the economy in the form of more jobs for Afghans and, of course, the foundation of private sector-led economy. Sorry.
Assad, just a quick question before we move on to Scott. You mentioned that that all of these various elements have really improved the morale of the business community in Afghanistan. Can you talk about that just quickly and tell us how you have seen that on the ground?
It is important, as I mentioned earlier, for a past year and a half, my company, we've been helping with Afghanistan Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Defense leadership, and we were training them in different areas like logistic management and leadership, procurement, et cetera, So I meet with them quite regularly. The morale was very down, so they were thinking at the end of this year, so the U.S. troop will leave, 5,500 is not the number that really they can support the Afghans at this point. They need a lot of help with training, help with equipment, the Air Force support, and all of the above. But now, thank you, hearing there's going to be a 5,500 along with those other folks which I mentioned, it could be close to 15 to 16,000. That's a good number. Afghans can do their own fight. They are good in fighting. But unfortunately, due to the problem the previous government created, the U.S. didn't have the free hand to really do their job in training and supporting the Afghan army. And nowadays, that's possible. And so that's really boosted Afghan morale. And although Afghan had 5,000 Afghan soldiers died last year, that's quite a big number. I'm talking about 2015.
Thank you, Assad. Scott Lockman is our next panelist, and he is the Senior Vice President for Political and Commercial Risk Insurance for Clements Worldwide. And I think one of the really good news items that Scott has to talk about is the number of clients that he has in Afghanistan. So that's all very promising. So thank you for being with us, Scott.
Absolutely. If insurance can be good news, we have...
we'll make it good news.
Okay, we'll make it good news. We have, at Clements Worldwide, we have over 100 clients which currently operate in Afghanistan, both on a personal level as well as on a commercial insurance basis. So they're running commercial operations within Afghanistan currently. And I really want to talk to you about just 3 things this morning. If you are going to go into business in Afghanistan, if you're going to invest dollars, you're going to deploy resources, assets, both personnel as well as physical assets into the country, please be smart about the way you approach it from the very beginning. So from a risk mitigation, risk management standpoint, if you have a company that currently has risk managers involved, if you have a risk manager on staff, make sure that whoever handles the risk or insurance for your operation is in every meeting from the day you think about starting to go into business in Afghanistan to the day that you actually deploy resources and then continue to be involved from that point forward. We, as a testimonial to some businesses, they think about insurance once they get the bid for that government contract, or they've got people leaving on Monday and, oh, we need insurance. So, as other people agree with, right? So I think that really if you involve whoever handles risk for your company from the very beginning, you can start to think immediately about security issues. Security issues, risk issues, where are you going to be in the country? What are you doing? How many resources are you putting there? How many of those are expats? Or they could be third country nationals, they could be in-country nationals, but you have to protect all of your assets if you're doing business there. Emergency planning. For those of you who are experienced in international business, there are many consultants out there, just like Clements Worldwide is an insurance consultant. There are many other consultants that do work on the security side. They can give you intel on a regular basis as to what's transpiring within a country, best routes to get equipment in and out of the country, all of those types of things. So you need to be cognizant of all of that information prior to engaging into investing. The second thing really is looking at, from the very beginning through your operations, is to continue to mitigate risk within country. And this isn't just Afghanistan, this is any international country. But as the banking community that's here today can testify to, is that banks are a little concerned when they loan money to start businesses abroad. And they want to make sure that money is secure in one way or another. By having good risk mitigation strategies within your company, you can either through risk transfer, through insurance products, or just by simply being safer in country, you can make sure that that loan that you have secured to start a business is going to be secure from the time it started to the time it's actually executed. So you truly need to understand that. Many banks now will have loan covenants that require you to carry certain types of insurance if you're operating a business. So think about those strategies on the front side, because that needs to factor into not only the way you operate your business, but the cost associated with starting the business. But insurance is a necessary evil, as I say. I've been in this business 36 years. It's been necessary evil for the 36 years of my life and 3 college educations for my kids. But it's something that you have to think about as part of your business strategy overall. And the third thing, just to kind of wrap it up, is to make sure that you continually look at your security, the efforts that you have around risk mitigation, the security strategy, and also the training of your staff. It's great to have all of these great programs, but if you don't train your staff on a regular basis, they will be at risk. Your assets in country will be at risk if you don't continue to maintain that on a regular basis. That's it.
Thank you, Scott, and I'm still going to interpret that as good news. Our next panelist is Dr. Robert Voetsch. Dr. Voetsch is the Director of Economic Governance and Trade for Crown Agents USA and has a vast amount of experience with countries who have been getting into the WTO, and I think can probably shed some light on just what this means for Afghanistan. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Thank you very much to the AACC for inviting me to be a panelist today, as well as disseminating the paper that Jeffrey and I worked on. It was very, very heartening to hear this morning that Afghanistan is literally at the threshold of WTO membership. It's really large congratulations go out to the government of Afghanistan, especially the Ministry of Commerce and Industries, which was a driving force behind that. One of the subtitles for my presentation is that opportunities, obligations that WTO membership brings to bear. And the little saying up there is really true, that getting membership in the WTO is the end of the beginning. From then on, as you get to the threshold of membership and as Afghanistan passes over to full membership later this month, it's the beginning of a new international trade environment and a domestic trade environment for Afghanistan. There are a number of commitments that Afghanistan will now have to enter into and be obliged to adhere to. There is the Trade Facilitation Agreement, which comes with WTO membership. There are a number of articles here. I've listed 13 articles that the government of Afghanistan will have to be compliant with. Some of these may already be the case as a part of the membership process, but others will still need to be promulgated through legislation, through administrative directives, and day-to-day government operations to make Afghanistan a more, active and member of the international trading community, and a place where, to paraphrase from the World Bank report, one do business and do business easily. If you look over here on the right side, there are a number of challenges that the government of Afghanistan will face. Previously, it was the Ministry of Commerce and Industries that was really the driving force with obvious support from the president for WTO membership. But going forward, what we found in a number of countries that have acceded to the WTO is that interministerial coordination becomes really critical post-membership. There are a lot of different parts of the government that need to work together in tandem. So interministerial coordination through working groups will be necessary between finance, commerce, beyond that, foreign affairs, interior, customs. These things will all be important. Infrastructure needs to be upgraded. I know USAID is doing a lot of work in this area through the Afghan Trade and Revenue Project, but there's a lot more that needs to be done, and the international community will certainly be looking to see how they can assist Afghanistan in this venture at the Brussels conference later this year. I don't want to go into everything here because of the time factor, but a number of things that are best practices is, again, the interministerial working group to use IT platforms to the maximum extent possible. It's nice that this one-stop shop has been set up, but a full national single window does need to come to the fore. That helps to reduce opportunities for corruption. It increases accountability and transparency, and it also democratizes the process because you don't have to be physically present to these places. You can access these systems remotely. In Afghanistan, despite its mountainous terrain, does have a very good infrastructure for cellular phones, but beyond that, the internet is getting better as well. So these are some of the things that Afghanistan's government and private sector and the international donor community need to focus on post-WTO membership. The opportunities side of the ledger here, there are a number of opportunities that Afghanistan has before it. It has a 3 to 5 year period where it's being waived from WTO compliance on a number of items. So 300 plus, actually. So this gives Afghan government and private sector an opportunity to reposition themselves to trade internationally, and as Afghanistan's economy becomes more open to imports from neighboring countries. There are a number of other opportunities that Afghanistan has. It has a number of industries that it has really a unique comparative advantage for in the region and even globally. Marble is certainly one area. Another area is in carpets, which we all know Afghanistan is famous for. Raw minerals, which was mentioned earlier in the first panel, is another area that has not been, invested in to the extent that it could be. Certainly the security environment is a part of that, and I think that the continuation of the international force in Afghanistan will help to stabilize and give confidence to international investors interested in the raw mineral sector, and also the transit corridors, the TAFI agreement that's coming into play, but others as well, that Afghanistan was always on this ancient Silk Route. It was always a crossroads between the Far East, Central Asia, South Asia, Southwest Asia, and beyond. And it can leverage that geographic position, which is very uniquely Afghan, to its advantage, and it's trying to do that, obviously, with these various agreements it's entered into. Another untapped opportunity is the Afghanistan overseas community diaspora. The business communities represented by in this instance by the Afghan-American Chamber of Commerce, have a lot of financial assets, international business acumen that they can leverage, as well as international networks outside of Afghanistan that the Afghan government and private sector could leverage. And so one last area, and then I'll close it off in the interest of time, is that the Afghan government has an opportunity, and certainly this is one of the factors that's holding it back down in terms of its current doing business indicator ranking, is the remittance of money from businesses that are investing in Afghanistan, remitting that into hard currency. I know that a lot of the work that you all are doing at Clements is trying to mitigate some of the risks that businesses have when they operate in Afghanistan, and certainly the Afghan government can assist that further. Certainly part of the Afghan trade facilitation agreement compliance will include that. A couple of best practices that Afghanistan, I know, has broached, it would help to inspire more confidence with international investors, is some of the things are related to joint border posts, particularly as Afghanistan tries to sort of reactivate its role as a major transit corridor. And those are basically where neighboring countries have one border post that is manned by customs services, the border police of both countries, and that helps to cut back on corruption, and it helps to facilitate trade because it's in the interest of both countries to facilitate that process. And another is to, and that's still a bit of a way in the future perhaps, is to have an authorized economic operator model for Afghanistan. This is a major risk management practice which helps exporters from Afghanistan to be able to export because their products and their name as a company is viewed as trustworthy. So with that, let me close off, Leslie.
Just a quick question before we open it up to the audience. There has been some criticism from some Afghan companies regarding the WTO because some of the small companies feel threatened, particularly due to the tariff reduction, et cetera. How do you, generally in your experience with other countries, how does WTO accession affect the small businesses?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, one of the reasons for the 3 to 5 year waiver period on 300 items is to try and protect these businesses. One of the things that can be done is that those businesses form sort of groups, business communities in the same sector, industry, where they can then try to maybe negotiate deals with international partners and become somehow protected through that arrangement. But it is a problem. I mean, we're seeing it in our own political election here in the U.S., where there are a lot of views that are being raised about the fact that international trade agreements hurt labor in the United States and businesses in the United States. And so that's part of international trade, is that there are winners and losers. And what the international community has tried to do in the context of Afghanistan is give this 3 to 5 year waiver period. One of the things the government of Afghanistan can do, the Chamber of Commerce in Afghanistan can do, and I don't know what the AACC could do to facilitate, is to sort of maybe get select groups of Afghan entrepreneurs and businessmen to visit other countries that have recently acceded to WTO membership or have been WTO members for a number of years to see how businesses in those countries were able to deal with opening of their borders to investment and imports from abroad.
I think it's very important for us to sort of have a caution in all of this because, as both Damien and Michael mentioned, we really do have to assess the gains realistically. And I think it's going to be very interesting to monitor this as it proceeds, and I'm assuming that there will be more reports coming out about that.
Oh, absolutely. I know it's a very big priority for the donor community, and certainly I know USAID through its ATAR project is working on this, but also there are a lot of other donors, the World Bank and the ADB,
Right.
to name a few, who are very concerned about this.
I'd like to open this up for questions, and I think we have someone already poised for a question. Could you please identify yourself?
Do you hear me? Yes? Okay. Now, thank you very much to take my questions.
Could you give us your name, please?
Now, you hear me? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking my question. My name is Saeed Mirzad. I am a Afghan-American geologist and mining engineer. Now, one thing that I wanted to hear in this meeting, and I didn't, because this is a new cycle of helping Afghanistan, is not what we should do, but what we shouldn't do. As Einstein put it, do the same thing and expect different results. Now, this is very important to see what went wrong with all this money that we spend in Afghanistan and so on. For instance, the gentleman mentioned mining in Afghanistan and said there's no infrastructure, railroad, a thing like that. Who says that you need infrastructure and railroad for any mining operation? Give me 2 donkeys and 1 horse, and I will start a mining operation in Afghanistan. How Europe started, how United States started. It means you should start mining at any level possible because we have to create jobs. Now, in Afghanistan, the main thing is create jobs. Now, once you have created these jobs, then people in each valley will help for the security. You don't need the police, to do this. Now you don't know, I tell you something new. You know that in the most remote part of Afghanistan, which is northern part of Afghanistan, Badakhshan, Faizabad, the finger of Afghanistan to China, they produce pig iron right now. I have seen that. You have 3-meter high blast furnace. They are using the iron ore and the coal from wood, and they are producing their utensils that you see in the bazaar of Faizabad, It means that you can start these things today. And you have mines, minerals in Afghanistan. If you start now, in 2 years, even less than 2 years, guarantee you that you will produce product. For gold, for instance, you don't need an infrastructure. You can put it in your pocket and go from point A to point B.
Okay, thank you very much.
One second.
Yes.
1 second. What I would like to do is to focus on things that we should not do first, and then look after the project that you are talking about. Thank you.
Assad, I'll let you give your views on those comments and the question.
Can you rephrase the question? What was the question?
His question really is, why can't we get started immediately in the mining sector? And I think there are probably lots of good reasons to discuss why it is a lengthy process. But if you could try to answer that.
Excellent. Well, first of all, it is really a privilege and honor to see Mr. Mirzad. He is the father of Afghanistan mining sector. So I was much younger than he was in charge of mines and minerals. And also, I had the pleasure of working at the same team that Mr. Mirzad was leading. It was about the current Afghanistan mines and minerals exploration, and also to find out what do we have in which part of Afghanistan. If I remember correctly, which you have all this information, it was estimated $1 to $3 trillion worth of mines and minerals, they are buried under the Afghanistan mountains and also dirt and all this other stuff. As you know, Mr. Mirzad, there has not been that much attention, to be honest. It was the Ministry of Mines, it was not as active as you could think of. Some contracts were awarded, and it was rescinded back. And so we have seen a lot of ups and downs in that area. And as you know, the mines and minerals Afghanistan has, particularly the gold or, all these other stuff. In Herat, what we have is the lithium. It's a peaceful area. If we can explore the lithium, everything is there. And according to you guys, the geologists, Afghanistan going to be just like the Saudi Arabia of Middle East, just from the lithium. But war, insecurity, and incompetent government in Afghanistan really prevented all these actions that you're talking about, if that helps. So I don't see that much plan. I was talking to a gentleman from Asian Development Bank. I don't know if he's still here or not. Even for TAPI, Afghanistan doesn't have the ways to just contact to take advantage of the TAPI, which in Asian Development Bank is paying the money. So again, to summarize this, the capacity is the problem. And the good thing, we Afghan would never admit that we need help with the capacity. It's a part of our culture. And if you could take care of that, Afghanistan will be a very rich country. But again, as I mentioned, security is the problem. Pakistan is particularly involved to make sure to deteriorate security. And the benefit for Pakistan and Iran is to just explore some of these mines and minerals and smuggle it back to their country. For instance, the number, if it's true, I heard on an annual basis, Pakistan is really getting up to $7 billion worth of mines and mineral in unsecure area they take to the country. Herat is also next to lithium. I don't know what they are doing, and I'm sure they will not let any other Western countries to come close to that because this is more on the border. I hope I answered the question, but of course
it is a sector that we will watch closely over the next decade because it is a long-term investment. We have time for one more quick question. Yes.
Thanks. With permission, two quick questions on WTO. One, my impression is Afghanistan's trade regime currently, before WTO accession, is more open than that of its neighboring countries. Tariff rates are lower. There's lots of smuggling in. It's a pretty open market. The question I have is, after the 3 to 5 year period, do tariffs have to go to zero, or is it allowed as a low-income country to have some kind of protection of agriculture? The second question relates to dumping. Iranian exports to Afghanistan are basically implicitly subsidized by very low-cost energy in Iran. And similarly, Pakistan's cement exports, which occupy a lot of the Afghan market, they're subsidized or they have tax exemptions, et cetera. Does WTO accession help Afghanistan in any way in sort of dealing with these kinds of floods of artificially low-cost imports? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that the whole purpose for the 3 to 5 year waiver period for over 300 items is precisely to address some of these issues of dumping by neighboring countries that produce similar products and can do so cheaply. And then secondly, to try and protect certain Afghan industries, and I think agricultural products fall into that category. I don't know that we have the time to go into specific details here, but certainly that is the purpose for the waiver period, and it is extended to Afghanistan and many other countries that are in a similarly, how to say it, I don't like to use the word fragile, but it's, for some of the industries it might be fragile because they could literally disappear overnight because of imports that come flooding in from abroad.
Leslie, can I just
Yes,
make
very quickly.
very quick point. WTO was explained very well, but it is time for Afghanistan private sector to take advantage of the US, European Unions, and Japan. For God's sake, the United States, they would allow, I believe, 4,700 items of Afghans to compete because of a tax-free, tariff-free, everything free. I mean, exported to the US, exported to European Unions, and for the same reason for Japan. So it is a shame we don't take advantage of that as much as we should.
Challenges and opportunities.
Yes.
And I think, again, we must caution ourselves and measure the success very carefully, and it will take a while. I certainly appreciate our panel. Thank you, Assad. Thank you, Scott. I think the risk mitigation is very important. And Robert, thank you very much. Thank you.